Hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming to our lecture today. We are going to look into the role of the Canadian government in the economy. And of course, we are going to go over a few slides. Some slides may not be, may are already self-explanatory. So I'm not going to, again, read them again. I'm going to give you a lecture using as a support, or I would say a support for having some visual materials. I'm going to use also the lecture notes. Okay, so let's continue with the maybe the next slide. Perfect. So, looking into the historical connections, sorry, Canada was one of the richest countries in the world in, I would say, 1955, and it has always been this case, meaning that because of the structure or the governmental structure of Canada, we have always been having new immigrants. We have been always having people with, well instructed from other countries, and they were all coming to Canada. We were giving them enough even infrastructure, enough safety, and different ways to help the population in order to grow. So always we have been having different types of movements or migrations that happened. For example, our railway, I can tell you, from east to west or west to east, it was built by Chinese immigrants. Very interesting. Or for example, for the real estate at the very beginning, again in 1920s, we started also to obviously increase the housing so the market as well in Canada, based on the huge and great effort of Italian immigrants at that time. So over years, over decades, we have been having movements of immigration, and I can tell you that in 1900, we were paying immigrants to come. We were giving them $100 at that time. It's huge. And then we were even paying for their trip, and they were coming to Canada. At that time, we had so many people from, British people. So depending on what was happening in the world, depending on the, I would say, the environment, the political environment of the world, we have been having different flows, I would say, of new immigrants to Canada, and they all came here. They have been establishing, of course, their communities in different places. One of the examples is the German community that started to establish in Kitchener. It's very interesting. If you don't know, go and search about the history of Kitchener, because before we were calling Kitchener, I think, small Berlin. Anyways, I think we were calling it Berlin, but I don't know if it's small. I don't even know if it was small or big Berlin, but it was Berlin. And even now, when you go to Kitchener in October, you do have Oktoberfest, which is the fiesta or the I would say the party that people they have for the beer. And this is what you see in Germany or in German populations in different areas in the world. So very, very interesting to look into the history of Canada, and again how different people from all over the world, they contributed into the building of Canada. Okay, sorry. Then what happened is that we do have in Canada a federal and provincial governments. We also have municipal governments. They all have, at different levels of governments, their I would say a chamber or a parliament. Now the parliament may be called differently. Okay, sometimes again this is just a I would say it's a council, we call it sometimes. Sometimes we call it a board. Sometimes we call that a parliament. And all of those different names, they are just bringing the idea in our heads, I would say in our minds, that this is always based on having a type of group of people representing people. So we talk about democracy here. People who are representing the society or their community, coming to different boards, for example, or places in order to make the decisions in writing so that everyone in that community or that city or that province or in the country follow the same rules and regulations. So this is how it works. Now, we can now talk about private and public services. The private services is when you have a service or a product that is made by private companies. So the government is just providing them with different services that they need. But the government is not going to interfere with the business decisions of that firm. So that firm or that company, for example, they need banks. So they have banks, banking services. They need security. They have security for their goods, for example. They need to be, again, to own their assets, houses, for example, or different manufacturing facilities. The government is giving them that guarantee. Those manufacturing facilities, they also need energy. They are not in the energy sector. They are doing something else. So the government is also going to provide them with the service. So as you see now, we are in a country where the government is providing services to the private sector so that people, individuals, they can make or create corporations. And then we are using different services that the government is managing because these services are all public. Now, giving you an example of a public service, we talk about universities and colleges. They are public, okay? And when they are public, of course, you can also find some colleges that are private colleges, but when they are public, the government has also its say. The government can also set the regulations for the quality of the education. For example, if you go to again, bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a Ph.D. degree, you will see that there are restrictions set in advance by the Minister of Colleges and Universities in Ontario, for example, where all of these different colleges and universities must follow the guidelines in order to make sure that the quality of their education is up to date and it's a high quality. So there are many systems in place for setting the rules, giving the standards, sending inspectors to review, of course, the activities of those colleges and universities, and then also review of entire programs every, I would say, 6-7 years. So now I just wanted to give you two examples. One was a private sector and one was for the public sector. What is in for you is that you need to understand the dynamics and the relationship between the government and different organizations or businesses, because we may be working for the government, and in this case we are going to have different types of questions, research questions, and then looking into how we are going to know more about some businesses, some sectors, some manufacturing fields, some again questions where we may understand more about the needs of the manufacturing facilities, and then to give them some more services so that we are going to just give a leverage to the industry in Canada. So we may be getting a job as research, again, scientists or research analysts for working for the Ministry of Industry, where they are asking us or giving us a task to look into or doing research on what can help the Canadian industry to increase their production by 10%, 20% in the next 10 years. This is a type of research question. So we have to look into what questions, what sources, how we are going to approach that. And then it may also be, again, it may be, again, a private organization that may hire us as a research scientist or as a research analyst. And they're going to tell us, look, we are dealing with the population. This is our client. We want you to do research in order to see how our clients are feeling. Are they planning, for example, if we are a car company, are they planning to buy their next car from us as well? This is a research question. And when we hire you in order to work on the project, we are expecting you, of course, to look into the entire picture, understanding the customers, understanding the business, the nature of the business, the reputation of the business, looking into now number of accidents, car accidents, how many of those cars are coming from this company, for example, what is the perception of people in Canada. You may also look at the perception of people about the car in other countries, because it may now give you some I would say advantage to have a descriptive data, and then to show to the Canadian population that in other countries people are at 100% happy with this car. And then you see through the surveys, you not only do the research, you also educate people. Giving you the example, the same, it means that in a survey, you may, for example, write down that the table below is representing the level of confidence of people using this car in 6 other countries. And then you put Japan, China, etc., etc. And you see that the level of confidence is 96%, more than 90%. And then you're going to now ask your question. You say, based on what you see in other countries, to what extent you think that you believe that again that you can have a confidence in the quality of this car in Canada. So we are exposing you to whatever is the case elsewhere. This is not bias, okay? This is just explaining, or this is just an educational table. And then we are going to ask you, what is your feeling? Now you are going to write down, for example, intervals 0 to 25% confidence, 25 to 50%, etc., etc. So this is a way that you will be exposed to different types of tasks. So coming back to Canada, because we are still working again talking about Canada. Let me just go to the next slide. Perfect. Of course, one of the things that even now we are talking about is the Great Depression. So here I'm going to read that, but I'm going to explain it as well. So among the industrialized countries, few human tragedies parallel the pain and suffering inflicted by the Great Depression in the 1930s. In fact, we had a recession. They have been in recession in 1921-22, and then a few years after, we had in 1928-29 a type of depression. And I'm going to tell you exactly what is a recession and what is a depression. In Canada, unemployment soared to 20% and the production levels dropped to 37%. Canada was, arguably the nation that suffered the most. Look, this is, very suggestive, and I'm not going to, of course, question, this opinion, because I didn't do research on this. But for the definition, I would say that many nations, they suffered, because even at that time, in 1930s, you have to look at the political context. You have to look into Germany, Europe, of course, the fact to what extent the European countries, they were advanced, and the States, they were still growing. And Canada at that time, it was one of the, richest countries in the world as well, with not too many, population, but with lots of rich, huge mines and natural resources. Even now is the case. Now, what happened at that time is that there have been some type of, issues that brought the society into having inflation, and the cost of the goods went higher. And because of that, people, they started to have issues buying the goods they needed, because salaries were not following the inflation rate. And this is exactly what happens in any situation, in any country, where because of the fact that the government, the bank of that country, is printing money or adding more money into the system, into the society, we are going to have a higher volume of money, and this can contribute into increasing the prices. However, at the same time, if you are increasing the prices, you need to also increase the revenues so that people can follow with that increase. And that increase, we call it inflation. It means that you're going to now see in the next, every day, you're going to see an increase in the price. Now, not always justified, but the reasons, there are maybe several reasons. One reason is that we are now injecting, or banks of those countries are injecting more money into the society. People are going to get more money, and then prices will go higher, and then you have to pay more. But if you earn more, and you're now paying more, it's okay, but you need to have a type of proportional or logical increase both in the money that you're earning, your salary, as well as the price of the goods that you're buying. If not, and this is what happened, the inflation went so high and salaries didn't go high enough that people started to buy less, to cut in their expenses, so that everything would just end up being the energy, or here they didn't have all the cars, so I would say, paying for the transportation, for their food, and of course the minimum, I would say, goods and services that they may use. And what happened is that because of the fact that prices were higher and people didn't have money, people started to cut their consumptions. And then all of those prices that were high, those products or services were not sold. So we saw that the revenue dropped in many corporations. They didn't make any profit. They started to have less and less profit. It prevented them to grow and to increase the number of the employees. Even it pushed them to do the layoffs. Very interesting, because this is what happened, and when people, they were laid off, this contributed into having more people not having enough money in order to buy the goods and services. And this is where we went into a period that we call a depression, where people don't have money to buy, businesses, they don't earn money to hire people, so you are going to see more people becoming again poor and more companies that are going to get bankrupt. And at the end of this vicious circle, you are going to see again unemployment. Okay, now here we talk about unemployment to 20%. It may even be a higher level. In China, for example, now the unemployment for the youth is more than 35%. Okay, so we are in depression. Okay, of course this is for the youth, but what I'm saying is that this is a depressional, I would say, condition. And what you do now? What you do is that the government is here to help, because the government has to make sure that the country is up and running. So if you're not having enough money with the corporations, they cannot pay their employees, and employees who are consumers as well will not be able to buy. So this vicious circle wasn't stopped. And it was a catastrophe for people. And this is what you can see, of course, in the next slide as well. Okay, so up to this point, most glitches in the economic system seem to correct itself, but now this economic tragedy persisted and no end was in sight. No end was in sight. That's because, look, this is a vicious circle. You cannot stop it. And this is why we are scared. We are scared now as well, because we don't want this to happen. Now you may say, okay, good, we understood. So what we should do, what they did to help the population. What they did is that was a complete reset that we talk about as well now. What happened is that the government started to pay people so that people could buy. And when they were buying all of the manufacturing facilities, different companies, they were able now to get the money in order to function. And then, like I would say, it's a manual way, not automated way, manual way to run the business by giving money to those who are using it. And then people, they would now buy, and then the companies would make profits. They would then hire employees, and then we would again rerun the system. Very interesting, because it was very costly. Many people lost their jobs, so many suicides, so many people affected. You know what? It lasted about more than, I would say, 15 years, 10 to 15 years. And people, they have been exposed to those type of issues. These things, they may even affect generations, okay? We don't want this to happen. So this is what happened at that time. And then to combat this, I'm going to read it again. A British economist by the name of John Maynard Keynes suggested that governments spend their way out of the depression by hiring unemployed workers for major public works. So we hired people, but we wanted to give them money, okay? And of course, not to give them money for free, but having them working to some extent. So his plan worked as the workers spent their wages, which stimulated economic activities in the private sector. Again, Keynes' plan, along with the beginning of World War II, led the way for the Canadian economy to return to full employment. But when you are doing this, of course, don't forget that the government also, again, is now giving stimulus, okay, money. The same thing applied again in the COVID era, where again the government started to pay again money to people who were not able to work. Very similar situation here, and we prevented the depression at that time. However, after the period of COVID, we were having too much money in the system, I would say, in the society, and this money should be taken back so that we could control the mass of the money in the society, and of course the prices. But the issue is that at that time in Canada a few years ago, the supply chain was also interrupted because of the COVID as well. And we started to look at the prices going higher, not because of the mass of money or monetary, I would say, mass in the society, but that was because of the lack or not having enough products. And again, this is just the law of offer and demand, where when you don't have enough products, obviously the price of products will go higher. And when this goes higher, obviously we are looking into inflation again. But here, when you're having this type of inflation, which is based on the supply chain and because of the lack of enough products or services, then you cannot play now with increasing the interest rate and expecting the prices to go lower, because this is not the reason why. It's not because you have too much money that again in the pockets of people that the price went higher. That's because of the lack of having enough products. So not now what you see is that again different governments in the world, they are now looking into, they are increasing the interest rate as well. By increasing the interest rate and not to give loans to new businesses, we are contracting the economy. But this is a contraction that is a response to a lack of enough food, services and products. So we don't know yet how it's going to end up, but it seems to many economists that this is like using the wrong medication for a wrong disease or symptoms. But again, we will go over again to see what's happening. But so for now, again, I'm not going to discuss about the economy here. I may not be, again, know everything. No one knows everything. What is in or out or behind the curtains, or what are the plans. But what I'm telling you is that you need to understand, at least in this class, in this lecture, the interactions between people, companies, corporations, and the government. Okay, so the aim is only using these slides in order to tell you that as a research scientist or as a research analyst, what you should have known before, what you should know about the role of the government, what has been done again with the last depression. And again, I tell you, we didn't have a depression just in 1930s. Every 10 to 20 years, especially after 1970s, we do have periods where we have a depression, we have a recession. That's because you always have this circle where everything again go down, and then we are going to now again make money, print money, getting richer. Then people are going to buy. There are the competitions in the market. We are going to have new products in the market. We are going to see people buying, and then prices they go higher. Again, unfortunately, the salaries they never, based on my opinion, again what I saw, they never follow the inflation rate. So you always have this issue that salaries they don't go proportionally higher compared to I would say the increase in the price of the goods and services. And then at some time everything is just going down. So you're going to see again people not buying. You're going to have an inflation rate, and then every 10 to 20 years we have this circle. So nowadays, now in 2023, we are in one of those periods where we are having of course we don't talk about recession because we don't want to talk about this to scare the population, but we are, I would say, in a situation that resembles to a recession when we are looking into the definitions. And this is because for years and years, I would say for the last 20 years now, salaries didn't go high. If you look into a debt calculator website on internet, it's called US debt calculator. You'll be able to see that the salary, the average wage of an American in the year 2000 was $30,000 per year. And after 23 years, the average salary is $36,000 per year. However, if you look into the average price of a house in the US, it was $166,000 in year 2000. Now, if you look at the average price of a house in the US, this is $466,000 US. So you see that proportionally, we didn't have the same rate of increase in the salary of people and in the price of houses. Now, I'm not going to go over each and every of these parameters that have been looked at, but what I'm saying is that you always have this type of, I would say, cycle. We will have it all the time. Okay, now I'm going to go back again to this lecture. I'm talking, of course, about the lecture, but going back to this slide. So why the government became involved in the operation of the market? That's because the government, again, had to do this. Now, we do have several types of governments. We have a mixed economy. In a mixed economy, the government, it's like in Canada, we are a mixed economy. What we do is that the government has its own, of course, again, ministries. They have their own ministries. They have their own jurisdictions. Some of them, again, they are municipal. Some they are provincial. Some ministries or I would say authorities are, or governments, they are federal. And the system in Canada is a federal government. So now, since this is federal, some activities are under the supervision or control of the provincial governments. Some others, like army, like immigration, for example, like Revenue Canada, they are under the authority of the federal government. But now, some sectors in the I would say the industrial sectors, they are public, so the government is managing those. For example, for the army, this is public. So these are all people in the army. They are all public servants. Like in the universities and colleges, we are all public servants, and the government is setting rules. And rules for the quality, rules for again giving the structure for those organizations. And you also have on the other side the private sectors where the government does not interfere with their decision making. The government is just making sure that we do have again enough infrastructure and services for those private sectors to work and to prosper. So this is again how it works. Now let's go to the next one. where, again, here with Adam Smith, what was saying is that he believed that the free market system would channel selfish, egoistic motives toward the betterment of society, and the term invisible hand was introduced to describe the effect that a free market economic system has no directing the self-interest of individuals toward a common goal. Let me translate it. That's because it has been written in other years. I would say it's an old, I would say, statement. It's written based on the terms that people in society at that time would understand very well. What happens nowadays is that we don't talk about invisible hand. That's because those days are gone where we were just relying on a newspaper printed by maybe a private or a public company, and we didn't have enough information, or I would say first had information, and people, they were just working, they were just making money, producing, paying taxes. Even we didn't pay tax before the First World War. As you know, taxes, they started to exist after the World Wars. And that was first for paying for the cost of the war, and then it stayed in the system, and people are now paying taxes. It's a way for the government to control the flow of the money, getting the money, and then to redistribute the money, tax money, for giving different services. So you see, even here there have been an evolution. And this is what we have now. And you still have some countries where they are having so much revenue that they don't have a taxation system like us in Canada. And again, they just do their business the way they would like to. But here in Canada, we do have taxes. We get the tax. We redistribute it for, I would say, giving other services. So the invisible hand, we may say, okay, yes, it works or not, but don't go too much into conspiracy theory. This is not the case. Everything is transparent. We have a democratic, of course, government, and even for the municipal government or for the provincial governments. So we know about the decisions. Everything is published. We have the journalists, of course, for that. And decisions are made by people. Don't forget that we are voting for our, representatives, even if they are, again, in different political parties. Those political parties, they are, again, coming from people. And we do have now people with some beliefs, economic beliefs, different types of beliefs, that believe that being in a party or another party, or no party, for example, you have the choice as well, is going to help them, of course, to make the country or make the rules and regulations in a way that they would like to live. This is why it's never perfect. Democracy is 51 versus 49%, but still we have the opposition party. We are all looking into different solutions. The government made of us is making decisions, good or bad. It is the best that could be done within the context of economic context, for example. So we cannot say in 10 years that we did make the wrong decision 10 years ago. That's because 10 years ago, we have been in a context within the conditions where we had to make that type of decision. Now, wrong or right, we couldn't see what would happen in the future. But at least based on the parameters that we had, based on the work of research analysts at that time, they looked into different parameters. They looked into different demands, looked into how consumers are feeling, what are the needs, how you, again, define happiness, so what we should now provide people so that they will feel happy, so that they're going to, again, produce well, living well, bringing prosperity for the future of the country, etc., etc. So now you see the role of research analysts or research scientists in the society. By learning more about what was the case, again, what is the history of the Canadian economy. Again, history is not just, it didn't start only in 1900, okay, it started before, but we are covering that. Okay, now he wrote about the free market will tend to allocate resources to their most efficient use. For example, if you start a business and you are not successful, then that means that not enough consumers want your product. If enough people buy your product, you will earn a living, your welfare increases, and so does that of your customers. So overall, what it's saying is that if you are producing a service or a good and you are again prosper, people they want to buy your products, then you're going to make money, you're going to of course increase the number of employments, having a second, third, fourth different store. This is what you see in grocery stores, for example, or at the beginning of the again the century, we started to look at Eaton Center or Sears, for example, where those families they started to have the first I would say big stores. And those stores, again, we saw that they did develop, and of course it went up to 1980s, 95, where we started to now look into the international competition, where we were able to buy from their own, I would say, suppliers directly. And nowadays, what you see is that now we can buy from suppliers of the big stores directly as well. And if we have Amazon or Shopify or other websites, these are the producers in other countries that are now having accounts and their online stores. And what is interesting is that we had for decades those, I would say, those big stores like Bay, Eaton Center, no, they don't have it now, but A, for example, they were buying with a huge quantity, and this is why they had a rebate. They were buying for less, selling for more. So for example, a trouser, they would buy that at 50 cents if they are buying at, I don't know, 10,000 trousers. And then they would sell it at $100. Can you imagine the profit? It's huge. And at the same time, what is interesting is that still the distributors now, they can connect directly with customers. So you can go to Alibaba.com, you can go to Amazon.com or .ca, and you can choose to buy a product. And what is also interesting is that the profit that Bay, for example, Hudson Bay is making in Canada, the profit by buying less and selling more in Canada in dollars, that profit is now transferred to different again corporations or manufacturing facilities outside of Canada, but they still make the same profit as a Canadian corporation. Okay, if we talk about $40 profit per trousers, okay, or per item in Canada, $40 is okay, it's $40. It's you work 3 hours, you get $40. But if you go to Brazil, $40 is the salary of a medical doctor. If you go to Cuba, they earn $10 per a month. Okay, a doctor maybe more because it depends again on how they are structured, but this is the average salary. So what I'm saying is that now the amount of the profit in dollars that the outside companies they made because of the online stores was just huge, and it made a revolution. And this is why you see more and more of our big stores, they are closing. That's because they don't make enough profit anymore. Why? Because the real profit is made online. And this is why you do have that huge transformation of countries outside Canada, where they were able to approach our consumers in Canada. Very interesting. So they can play with the prices, they can give rebates much easier, because you know what, when you make a pair of trousers at 50 cents, even if you sell it at $1 online, you're making 200% profit. Okay, so the range, I mean, that we can really play, and we never do that. Of course, we always keep the prices high. So we offer you keep a pair of trousers at $200, and then we put on the sticker that it was $200. We sell it to you $50. You know what you do? You are a consumer, okay? You say, oh my God, $200, oh 50, I'm making 150. You don't see that they are making 5,000% profit. Okay, which is okay. This is their I would say their right. But what I'm saying is that things are changing, and so when you're reading about these, talking about the consumers, etc., this text is valid for its time. But nowadays, with the technology that we have, even if we do have the same taxation policies, etc., For those companies, they don't care. They make a pair of trousers at half a cent, or half a dollar, 50 cents. They sell it at $100. No sales for Christmas. $25. They pay even 25% tax. Okay, they still make so much money. It's again 2,000% profit. So this is what's happening now. But again, let's go over again. Go back to the I would say the train of thought for this course. So, if you are successful at your business, this will attract competition, and in order to continue to sell your product or service, it will be necessary that you make your goods and services more attractive. The issue here is that we don't make them anymore in Canada. The majority of goods and services that we're getting are coming from other countries. So this is like us making the money because we have our natural resources. That's because we do have some investments, because we are investing our money in other countries, again, other countries where, again, we buy, for example, manufacturing facilities. We are also, again, paying people much less than in Canada. We are making the products, goods, and services that we are going to export to Canada, to ourselves. In this case, this is okay. These are investments. But nowadays, those countries, they don't need our investments neither. They have their own money because they did make enough money in the past, and they do have access to all of the social media and all of the platforms in order to have the online sales. So when we are talking about attracting competition here, this is now international competition. This is now globalization, even if we are now looking into deglobalize. But if you would like to deglobalize, you will need to start making or producing goods and services in your own country. But how much will be the cost? If you are selling, I would say paying someone at $50 per hour in order to make a trouser that you can sell at 50 cents, this business doesn't make sense unless you switch from a trouser, doing a swing or making I would say a shirt. You are switching to something with technology that you will have only. And here we talk about the power of technology, and this is one of the reasons why, even if for the last decades we have been sending out the I would say sending out our technologies to other countries because it would cost us less to produce products. We saw that, oh my God, they are now outside of the country. And nowadays, I'm sure you heard about the chips, for example, computer chips, that now the US is bringing back the technology and, of course, the entire factory or the technology, of course, to their own territories so that they are going to, again, work under the US jurisdiction. But what I'm saying is that in the past, we have been sending out the technology as well, and we have been making our products, everything in the Eastern countries. Why? Just to make profit. But without understanding that, look, in our countries, we may also need to have management, people, technicians, and platforms or manufacturing facilities in order to make those. If we don't have them, then we will always be dependent on the other countries for making it for us. So we may be managers or rich people now, but we will continue to pay. And nowadays what happens is that those countries are controlling that. So what you see now is that there's a movement of this technology from one country, China, is now being transferred to India. And now you see what's happening with the politics, with all of the discussions, with all of the different types of, now you go to G7, but then you have G20, where India and China is also in, but you now have BRICS, where G7 countries are not in BRICS. France tried to get in, but they are not in. So you're looking into groupings, political grouping or geographical grouping, just for the economy. So this is where Canada, of course, we are a Western country. We are going to stay on the Western side, and we'll have to build on that. But you will see that these changes, okay, what's happening, are going to push Canada in order to bring back the technology or to make manufacturing facilities on the Canadian soil Now, with the high cost of the for the payments, it's minimum $15 I would say, the wage, and of course the high cost of the housing as well. There's a lot to do in the future, in the next 10, 15 years minimum, in order to adjust. But after that, Canada is going to become self-sufficient, not just for the food, but also for technology, for the goods. Also, because I told you here, we don't even make our own plastic pieces. If we need something in plastic, we don't make it. We buy that from other countries because it's less expensive. But time will come where we are going also to have our petrochemical, I would say, industry. We started that in September last year, 2022. For the first time, Canada started to have a manufacturing facility in the central, I don't know which province, but the central province, so that now we started to make our own plastic pieces. Very interesting. We didn't have it before. And same thing for vaccines. Government paid about $800 million in order to have a facility in, again, one of the central provinces in order to make vaccines. So again, you see, instead of being dependent to other countries to make vaccine, now we are starting to invest in Canada. But again, for adjusting the salary with the cost, and of course with competitors who also, they always try to, I would say, sell for less, and then they compete with us, especially at the beginning when it's going to cost us more to make a product and then to sell it with a higher price, where our competitors who are already having the infrastructure, it will cost them less, and they will able also to sell for less a product. Here, these are the competitions that we are going to deal with in the next 10 to 15 years. But again, we hire you in order to tell us, okay, do some research, tell us which product we should be producing, which product that is going to be Canadian is going to be well perceived and people are ready to buy 2 times more, but it's a Canadian vaccine. These are types of questions that we're going to ask you. These are the research questions, and this is what you are going to look at for doing research, and of course also get the latest updates, or updated, I would say, opinions by having surveys. Perfect. Now, possible shortcomings of a free market system. Consumers and suppliers may not have satisfactory information in which to make decisions, of course. So we talk about advertising. That often helps to fill this gap, although more often than less, it is meant to persuade rather than inform. So here we are looking into ethics. And for the ethics, this course is not about ethics, of course, but whatever we do, whatever we say, we must be ethical. Ethics being a set of moral values, and ethics means that, again, you have a personal ethics and you have a community ethics. The personal ethics is your set of moral values, and you live with your ethics in your private life. But when you're in a community, you need to work and follow the culture of that community, and of course to follow the ethics of that community as well. So having or knowing about the set of moral values with which we are living, and we do our transactions and we do our communications, we do live together based on those ethics. Now, advertisement in one way to advertise and talk about your product. So far, so good. We talk about the product, but when you want to persuade people, when you want to show the advertisement 10 times per day, if you would like to show people your logo everywhere when they are driving, eating, sleeping, hearing something, for example, from your logo, this becomes too much persuasion. And of course, we need to set rules so that we are not going to invade the privacy of people. Even if you may say, but look, I am at home, I watch YouTube, and I am just listening non-stop to different things, and suddenly I'm having advertisement after advertisement, 15 seconds here, then followed by 5 seconds. I say I don't want to see that, then YouTube says you have to pay $15 per month. Anyways, you have these type of intrusions, I can call it intrusion personally, in your life, and again within your dining room. Okay, so we have to set rules. And we have to have to push companies in order to obey the law. Okay, now to what extent it's applicable and to what level it's applied, I leave it to you to judge it, because there are different platforms, different rules, etc. But this is the issue that we talk about, which is about the market imperfections. One of them is the way or your accessibility to the advertisement, which is not the same for all of the companies. Now, health standards, government building codes, Industry Canada and Service Canada are designed to fill the gaps. So these are all, again, governmental services, and we went over the governmental services already. So I will not go more into detail, but we are going to have some discussions in the next slide. Very, very interesting, and you're going to see that, for example, we can talk about the marketplace doesn't always create sufficient competition. You're right. If you look into, for example, Bell and Rogers, this is for the phone, for TV, etc. You see that all of the other companies that we have, they are all owned by Rogers or Bell, or they do have contracts with them. So the two owners of the infrastructure for the communication, for example, internet as well, are only two companies. You may say, but look, is it fair? It's not a question of being fair unless you look into the market. This should be fair to people. You cannot just have a monopoly, or even having a monopoly made of two different companies who are having contracts in between them in order to still manage the market, because this is illegal. And again, this is why this is a role of the government in order to set the rules. They can also set the prices for the different communication services. And again, this is why, again, this is illegal for those firms in order to get together and then to, I would say, set a price. And again, you may say, but look, in Canada, we have the highest price of the cell phones. You're right. Okay, but we are looking, or the government is looking into reducing this, I would say, the price, but we will see what's going to happen, how politically or how our politicians are going to make the decisions in order to, again, keep that low, because we need communication. Look, like education that is free, and you know why? That's because we need to have a nation of instructed people, so that when there is changes in any, I don't know, any type of, I would say, science, if we are having a change in the technology, we are able to have people who will be able to learn that technology and to apply that as soon as they can. One of the reasons why Germany became, again, the pioneer after the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, that's because they had the highest number of instructed people at that time in their country. So they had people who knew about the standards, knew about the techniques, knew about, again, getting they had the habit and the discipline to learn and to apply and to work in groups. And this is why Germany became Germany. Not because they are genetically different. No, not at all. They did work for that. In 784, they started to have the first free public education services in Germany. Germany at that time, of course, I'm talking about a German population at that time, because we didn't have Germany at that time. That was another name. So what I'm saying is that the same thing applies here, where we need to, I would say, look into the education as something that must be free, because this is good for the population, for the country. The same thing applies to the communications as well. In many countries in Europe, you have free internet that covers the entire city. Why? Because we understood that internet is contributing into a better communication. I know you always have junk, I know, but the majority is transactions, business transactions, buying, selling, learning as well. Okay, so these are the things, these are the points of the subject of discussion. Maybe one of your topics for research would be, do we need or should Canada have a free internet for everyone? Yes, and then you're going to look into factors, parameters, what we should do, what people think. You're going to look into resources, what has been done so far, and then you're going to have surveys, for example, to ask people what they feel about internet, how long, how many hours they use it, for what they use it, what's their gender, what's their age range, of course, and then you're going to come up with a solution, with a type of proposal to say, look, we need to have the internet free in each of the cities of Canada, because it will bring more profit to the business. It's going to contribute more into the circulation of the money, much more than just us, of each consumer, paying $50 per month minimum. It's even more than that. Okay. These are the topics in research, and this is how you use what you learn in social research, I would say research in society course, to our course. This is how you read, you understand, you think, and then you're going to apply your knowledge in order to find better solutions based on the context, based on the time we are doing that. Again, we are not in the 18th century, where we are going to read and then apply whatever was said at that time, because all of the anything that was said or done at that time, it was the best thing to do at that time. Nowadays, things are changing. And we always need to do research, because context change, technology change, needs of people change, their perception change, many factors change. Okay, now we also have a Competition Act in Canada, which is illegal for firms to get together and fix prices. You may say, but look, I just saw that in 2012 we had the Loblaw, again, what else? Anyway, always one of the Walmart, all of those different big companies, they sat together and they did increase the price of the bread by 400% over the last, I would say, 10 years. You're right. We still are waiting to see how they are going to pay back, or what damage it caused to the population, because when you're increasing by 400 times the price of the food, at least minimum, just the bread for people, it's going to push them to buy less, or to take less from other businesses. And when you are looking into your salary, you need to have a portion of your salary for your housing. Another issue that we can talk as well. You also need to have enough money for food, but you also need to have the remaining of the money in order to buy clothes, to have your entertainments, to pay for your education, to have some vacation, okay? And again, it's not just that, having enough money to have a decent life based on your own, I would say, definition of what is a decent life. Based on your definition, this may be a research question as well. You may ask the population in a specific area, what is for you having a high standing of living standing, I would say, of life. So I don't know, but something right like what is your perception about being happy? What is your perception of having a high standard of living? These are the different types of questions that you can also ask. But coming back to the question, yes, we have a Competition Act, and this is illegal. Now I'm still waiting to see how those companies, those big companies, are going to pay back. And the issue is that even if they pay back, are they paying back to the government, or are they paying back or compensate the damage that they made for a decade to the population? Because then if I had to pay more for my bread for 10 years, I couldn't get bring my kids, for example, to the movie theater. Okay, are these damages? How you are going to quantify that? How you are going to even have a research question on what is the damage done to a population because of the 10-year hike in the price of bread? Okay, that was illegal based on the Competition Act in Canada. And again, this is interesting. And at the end, you can also conclude to say, okay, what is being done now? Nothing yet. But what I'm saying is that this is what a research scientist and research analysts, they do in the society by using their knowledge about the news, about the interactions between people, governments, and businesses. Perfect. Now, I will just go again. I'm not going to give you more examples, but we have more examples than just this one. Even the other example is the price of the phone. I would say wireless phones and internet as well. Why Canada we are paying the highest price for our internet, for our wireless, for example. Okay, I'm going to respond to your questions, of course, after when I finish the lecture as well. So let's go over the third-party effect. A market transaction may affect someone other than the buyer and seller. So here, if you are now monopolizing and you are again getting all of the money and the profit for you, your consumers may not buy. But at the same time, if you are paying less to your suppliers are not going to be able to even survive. So it should be something fair and maybe logical. It's not just being fair, it's being logical. Now the issue is that since for years and years, 30, 40 years, all of this, the big stores, they were buying from their suppliers from Eastern countries, or even, yes, if European countries as well. They were getting the maximum profit. They were not giving, again, a huge portion of that profit to their suppliers. And because of the internet and all of the online shoppings, and Amazon as well, what happened is that now you have suppliers that are bypassing those stores. That's why you see Eaton Center, Eaton itself, that closed. Or you see Zellers, which is of course owned by Sears, but even that one, the strategy was to have a store where you had higher marks, I would say, higher prices, and you were also having another store that would be owned by the same company, but they were selling for less with lower quality. It's like Mercedes-Benz. You can buy a Mercedes-Benz wagon at $250,000, okay, with highest quality, etc. But you could, now it's changing now, but you could also buy a Mercedes-Benz at $25,000 with, of course, less restrictions, less quality. Still, they had the good quality as well. But what I'm saying is that companies, they started to create their own generic, their own shadow, I would say, but they would own that lower cost store. And this is where suppliers, they came into the equation and they reached to the population directly through the internet stores. This is what's happening. Continue with this one, with this. Okay, so now third party, we went over the third party effects, of course, so I'm not going to go over that again. Now the unmet public goods, these are provided by the government and or contracted out to private companies. How we do this? This is because we are paying our taxes. Government has that tax, that money, that is now being distributed for unmet public goods. And these are, for example, we would like to make a bridge. Now the government is going to say, look, we would like to have contractors now come up, give us a proposal, and then we are going to give you the money, and you're going to give it to us. So, for example, make the bridge in the next 5 years. So these are unmet public goods that are provided by the government, and of course they're contracted, or they're of course contracted out. Now we also have other topics like army, or like for police force, and here what happens is that each person cannot pay for the army or for the police, so their budget is coming from our taxes. We pay our taxes, now a percentage of our tax, that it is going to be distributed to or given to the Ministry of Defense, or this is now going at a provincial level. It's going to be given to the province, and the province is now, based on their policies or their, again, decision-making rules, they are going to, I would say, distribute that into their police force as well. So here we are talking about what is private and what is public. We already talked about that. Now, what else? No, I talk about that as well. The pursuit of earning an income. Individuals compete with each others for job. Of course, we know about that. We need to distribute the income. This is where there's always discussions about that. To what extent this is fair? What is fair? And how people they perceive fairness. Is it based on what you have learned so far? You have three MDs, two PhDs, and you need to have a higher salary, or is it because of your responsibilities? Is it because of your level of productivity, or what exactly? How you define that? How you are going to explain or define why a person is having a higher salary? Mm, This has always been, again, a question. Now here, at the list, at the third point, we can read that if a person is unable to compete in a free market system, he or she will not be able to earn an income. In this situation, the government has intervened in order to achieve a more equitable distribution of income. This is happening through different systems like the one that we have, which is welfare system. During the COVID, we also looked into giving or thinking about giving a basic income, monthly income to people. Of course, this didn't go too far. Mm, the government paid about $2,000 per month to many individuals in order to, again, you see, so that we wouldn't see repeating the same issues that we had in 1930 depression. However, when people they were receiving the money, they were still not receiving everything. The 10% of the money was retained from the again $2,000 that they were receiving as a tax. And the year after, when COVID went down, about 20 to 30% of the money that was given to people, it has been removed again. So it was again, they were taxed much more and they had to pay back. So it was a way for the government to inject more money into the society in a period where we needed that to run the business, because people were not working, people were not able to work, but they still needed to again to they need some products as well. But then exactly 1 or 2 years after, the government decided, of course that's what they did remove the what is that, um, um, the money that was added into the money market in the society. So again, they did it well, I would say, but this is how the government can intervene. These are the shortcomings. So other things, again, for the poverty, again, defined in the terms of a minimum income necessary for an individual or family. But what is the minimum income, and what is the minimum income necessary for people to have a decent life? This one can also be a research question. Because if you look into, you can just do a research by looking into, okay, what is the I would say average salary needed in Ontario in order to have in order not to be under the threshold of poverty based on the definition. Now you can have a definition of poverty and WHO. You can find the definition of poverty, I would say, in many places. But the definition of poverty for me is that when you are paying more than 50% of your salary just for your housing, and then nothing is left, because if you're paying 60-70% of your salary for your housing, nothing is left for you for entertainment. Even you have to cut the corners for the food, now for the drugs, of course, for those who have the insurance, which is paid again from our taxes to only, not everyone, but usually it should be universal, but you should also need to have an insurance. So some people, they have to pay for the insurance as well, so it's not free for everyone, especially for newcomers. I'm talking about new students, international students. But what happens is that we are looking into the poverty that we have to define already, and then we have to look into, okay, now what is this, the threshold of poverty, how much money people are earning, and what's the cost of living in a specific city, because it's different. Now for you, one of the exercise, if I was in class with you, because this is online, that I would go to Revenue Canada calculator, and I would have my calculator for Revenue Canada, how much tax I have to pay, in one tab in my Internet Explorer or browser. Then I would open a second tab and look into, I would go to pay scale space Canada space research analyst or research scientist. And then I would look into the average salary in Canada that we would pay to a research scientist. Then I would start open another tab in my browser. That tab would be questioning on Google or anywhere. Now you have other places, of course, as well, but I just say Google because it comes to my mind. But you're going to search for what is the minimum salary or budget necessary for living in Toronto. So you have three tabs open. One is how much money you are going to earn. The other tab is how much is the cost of living in Toronto. And the third tab is how much you are going to pay taxes from your revenue in Ontario. You will be amazed by seeing that your average salary when you start, even when you end up after 10 years, is going to be about maybe $60,000, $70,000 per year. This is the salary based on Pay Scale Canada research scientist or research analyst website, and you did the search on Google. Then go to the second tab where you would like to see the cost of living in Toronto. And you will see the cost of living in Toronto is $4,200 as of today. Okay, it may change. It will change. So $4,200 you need to have cash in your pocket in order to have a, again, decent life, again, based on the definition that we give in Toronto. And then you go to Revenue Canada calculator, where you're going to click on Ontario and you're going to enter your salary of $70,000 per year after 5 years, I would say. You put it in the calculator. You will see that, okay, I will leave it to you, but you're going to see that even now when you're getting that salary after tax, it will not be $4,100 per month for allowing you to live based on the definitions of poverty and non-poverty to live in Toronto. And what is even interesting is that, and you will find it out, is that even many people getting that salary, if they want to live in Toronto, downtown Toronto, they are already under the threshold of poverty. Very interesting findings. This is right there. And now this is a very interesting research question, okay? What is the minimum wage necessary to live in? And now you are going to look into different cities in Canada. And this is very interesting to know exactly in each city what is for the same job, what you can just get one job. For one job, it's a research scientist or research analyst. For this job, how much is the salary, average salary in 10 different cities? How much is the tax that people they have to pay in those same cities? How much money is left in the pocket of people doing the same job, again I would say entry-level position? And then are they or not under the threshold of poverty? You can now do that research in 10, 20 cities in Canada, and this is very useful, okay, to see, okay, where we are, what's happening, and why it's useful. That's because then when this type of articles or research results are published and people they know, it will help the government to read that as well, to understand that actually whatever you earn is going still to keep you under the poverty line or threshold. So we have to move on and looking into increasing the salaries, while when you increase the salary, you are not increasing or contributing into the inflation. But is it by increasing the interest rate and stopping everyone to be able to buy houses that you are going to resolve the situation? This is the issue that we are always struggling with. But at least when we have research scientists and analysts doing the job, it will give us the screenshot of the society at that specific time. This is why you have surveys or studies every 4 months, every 3 months, just to see the trends as well. It allows the government as well to make decisions, to write the laws, to change the policies. This is why it's important. So your research, okay, you may be looking into the evolution of the I would say the relationship between the taxation rate, the salary for an entry-level job, and how much money is needed to have a decent life in any city. And you just cover that over 6 months or 3 months or 4 months. You publish that, and it helps people to understand what's happening. Perfect. So here, this is again the average weekly earnings. Again, this is up to 2013, but you can again find other sources and find out for Ontario, for example, what is the average earning. Okay, look, in 2013, the average earning in Ontario was $920. Okay, very interesting. And then you can now look into the main total income by family types. In Ontario, you have $74,000 in 2012. It's very interesting to see that. Look, from 2008, we had $70,000 in Ontario, $71,000, and we had $75,000 in 2012. However, does it follow the inflation? Does it follow the increase in the price of housings? These are the questions that we need. We cannot just look into a table and say, look, it went up, perfect, everyone is happy, we are more rich now. No, because the money has a value. If you were buying an ounce or 32 grams plus minus some milligrams of gold into year 2000, if you were keeping the same amount of the same gold pieces or gold, here now it would be the value of course would be 5 times more, but it's not the value that is much 5 times more. That's the value of the money that did lose its value by 500%. So if you're looking into 2008, you can look into the value of the gold, for example, and the value of gold now. You will see that with $70,000 in 2008, you could buy 1 kilogram of gold. But in 2012, with $75,000, you can just buy half a kilogram of gold. So the value is less, even if the numbers are higher. So again, this is where research scientists and research analysts, they can intervene in order to explain, observe, and all of the explanations and observations are useful for making policies, for making decisions, at least for contributing into the knowledge of the society. But at the end, again, whatever we do is for finding new solutions, observing, and then to explain, and then it may allow again other people who are making decisions, companies, corporations, people as well, to look into what they can do in order to prevent that or prevent it from becoming worse. Or worser. We have the word worser. Again, you can also search that on the dictionary as well. Okay, perfect. So for the rest of the slides, I'm just going to click here. We already talked about the stabilization. At the bottom, you see the fiscal policy. The fiscal policy is something that, this is not a law. This has the power of law, but this is the way that government is going to manage the I would say whatever is happening in the economy. And we can now set, I would say, interest rates. We can set the mortgage rates. We can now, for example, stop some companies to do some transactions. Not long time ago, we started to talk about preventing banks to buy their own stock, because if they buy their own stock, then they are taking our money. We keep it in our accounts. But the bank has the money to buy their own shares. So this is like boosting their own, the value of their own shares in the stock market using our own money. Okay, so now we are talking about this type of changes or checking, I would say, or monitoring the activities of banks, but not just banks, any place where we are having some, I would say, business finance. So this is why we are talking about destabilization. Not to what extent this is useful, or this is useful is always useful, but to what extent it's going to be applicable, this depends on institutions, on the dynamics. And again, here, like you, I'm just following the news, and I just read the news that are posted, so I don't know neither. But anyways, the government has to, I would say, monitor the fiscalities, and of course to follow the fiscal policy, because they wrote it, so they have to do this in order to keep the economic stability. This is why. Okay, now for the impact of the government intervention, this is the last thing that I'm going to talk about. This is interesting because you can also set the price ceiling. It means that the government can impose, again, a maximum price for a product. Now you may say, but look, interesting, but why in November 2021, the price of gas went up by 30%, and the transportation cost went up by 30%. And after a lagged period, so of the 3, 4, 5 months, we saw the price of many articles in the society going up by 30 to 40%. You may say, okay, why? The why is that we should have put the price ceiling for the gas, obviously. But as I told you, we don't own the industry. We just have 25% share in our own, I would say, gas industry. At the same time, this is not the job of the federal government. They don't have jurisdiction in, I would say, keeping the price of the oil or the gas, sorry, in each province. This is the jurisdiction of provincial governments in order to, again, impose a maximum price for the gas. So if in November 2021, the Ontario government, British Columbia government, other provincial governments, if they did impose a maximum price on the gas in each province, we wouldn't see any increase in the of 30% of the transportation cost, hence other increases because everything is transportation. And then we wouldn't see maybe ourselves now at this moment with this type of issues that we are having. It means that, because that's a cascade, it has a domino effect. You increase the price of the gas, it will affect everything. As of today, not just today, because you may watch this video again later in 3 months, 2 months, or maybe a year or two. But what I'm saying is that at any given time, you can see that when the price of gas went higher, we also had higher cost of living because many goods are coming from the transportation. And if, for example, you're renting again something, even if you're not transporting your condominium, you have a landlord. Your landlord is buying food, or your landlord has to pay the mortgage for the house that he or she is renting to you. So when the gas price goes higher, the inflation goes higher. Now banks are intervening, the Bank of Canada, for example, in order to increase the interest rate. And then we are going to again hike, bringing more the prices. They will be higher. And then what happens? People, they don't have money in their pockets. We start cutting in the corners in our consumption. And then we will see contraction of many businesses that will not be creative because they don't create anymore. And then we are going to, again, stop that. So contraction of the economy, we are not making more businesses, not making more employments. And at the same time, we will see that the prices are going higher. So the government intervenes by saying, look, we are going to increase the amount, I would say the hourly payments from $14 to $15. Perfect. But do you know that employers, they will pay you $15? Perfect. But they can decrease the hours of work. So we may give you, you may be working 20 hours per week and you have been paid 14 hours. Now, if I have to pay you 15 hours on the news, I did increase the salary. But the truth is that the employer can tell you just, look, instead of working 20 hours, you're going to work for 19 hours. And you're even going to gain more. So these are the issues that are all interrelated. That's why we talk about the interaction between the government and the corporations and again, individuals. This is why we need to perform research in order to find some explanations, bringing some solutions. Now, to what extent someone is going to hear us, to what extent we are going to take care of the results to use it, what are the politics behind, okay, what is good for the country and how some decisions are made by who or with which political parties, because they decide on, again, how you're going to, for example, increase the housing or increase the immigration numbers. And then if you have more immigrants, then they need more jobs and more housing, but you don't have enough jobs or enough housing. And at the same time, you're having an inflation. But on the other side, again, we're asking new students to bring $20,000 with them to be able to pay for their tuition fees the first year. But on the other side, you're going to push them, of course, to work, for example, in Tim Hortons for, I don't know, full-time or part-time. And then we're asking them at the same time to be present in each class in person. So it doesn't match correctly. But you know what? These are all different decisions that are being made. And everything is just based on research. We need research scientists, we need research analysts in order to go to the right places, asking the right questions, helping us to make the right decisions. If not, we will end up in a chaotic society. But as you see and as you know, so far so good, Canada is one of the best countries in the world, and we need research scientists and research analysts in order to contribute into keeping the system this way and to improve the Canadian system. And that's why we are here. So we did see here about the history. We did look into some errors. We did make good critiques of the politics actually. We went over the limitations of the way that we can see and we can decide and we can act. Okay, so now that you understand to some extent ins and outs, to some extent again of the economy in Canada, you understand what is waiting for us. It's looking into again the interaction between people and companies and the government, policies making, Bank of Canada, for example, policies, fiscal policies, immigration policies. All of these policies are being up to date or updated or written. Update every year, usually even sooner, because of the research results, because of what research scientists and analysts are doing, based on us being the eyes and, of course, the brain as well, to some extent, of people who are making decisions in order to keep this country one of the best in the world. So I'm asking you again to know well all of the dynamics, okay, to stay very positive, to provide a perfect service by asking the right questions, getting the valid answers, coming up with a good analysis, and then to come up with solutions that you may be making or proposing. And this is what we will see when we are going over the PESTEL analysis, which is one of the assignments for you in this program. So thank you so much again for your, I would say, again, attendance as well. We are done with the lecture, and I'm now going to respond to